What's up guys, Matt with BleepinJeep. The last time I took the Scorpion out, I was a little rough on her and I broke an axle. It was a long time ago, so I don't even remember which one it is. So let's diagnose and fix the problem in today's video. Let's get started. So how do you know which axle is broken? Well, besides the snap, crackle, and pop that you're going to hear, one of your wheels is going to stop pulling. If you're not locked, then that means you're not going to go anywhere for the most part, depending on the terrain that you're on. So let's put this up against a tree and see which axle it is. That's another way you can do it. Put your Jeep up against a tree or something solid, and we're gonna spin the tires and see what gives. Pretty sure it was a rear axle. In fact, I know it was one of them. I'm gonna put it in two-wheel drive. We'll just go up against this tree, and it's pretty obvious right there. So I'm locked front and rear. I had it in two-wheel drive. The rear, both of the rear tires should spin. One of them's not. I know that's the broken axle. All right, let's lift this thing up and put it on our handy dandy trusty Harbor Freight jack stands. And here's another telltale sign which side it is. I have a leaky axle seal, so you know there's something going on in there. That means that thing's flopping around. Now, if you had a C-clip axle, which I don't, this one is attached right here by 4 bolts. But if you had a C-clip, the whole axle would slide out. And I have a spool, which a spool is just like a full-time locker basically. So it should be locked with that wheel. But you can see when I spin this one, that one does nothing. With the locker, this one, if I spin this one forward, that one should spin forward. Open differential, if I spin this one forward, that one should spin backwards, or the drive shaft will spin, just depending on how you have things set up. So first step, let's take off the wheel. I'm running wheel spacers, so we'll need to take those off as well. Then we need to remove the brakes. Sometimes you can get away with removing the entire assembly. We'll see how that works for us. There's just 2 bolts on the back here. And then, oh, the whole thing will come loose. There we go. Now, try not to drop that and set it aside. Rotor comes off. That doesn't sound good. Now there's 4 bolts back here, and on a non-C-clip axle, that's what holds the axle in and not sliding out. So let's remove them, because we want this sucker to slide on out. Okay, all 4 bolts are out. Now let's see if this needs any persuasion. Nope, pulled right out. And that, my friend, is your problem. That should be good news though. If we can grab on, okay, so what we need to do is get the other side out, obviously, and all the little metal shards that come along with it. But since this is, oh, it looks like it may be broken inside the carrier. If it is, that's a problem. It's right where it necks down. So let's see if we can get the other side out with magnets. If it will not come out with magnets, it's going to be a long day. Okay, have a look down in there. This is exactly what I was hoping did not happen. I don't know if you can see that or not, but the axle shaft broke off inside the carrier. So that means we're going to have to pull the other axle shaft and the carrier to get that out. So a little more work than I had hoped. If that was broken halfway down the shaft, you could get a magnet on a stick in there and pull the entire other half of the axle shaft out. But since that's not the case, it's like broken off in the carrier, and I'll show you that here in a little bit when we get it out. But Just makes for a longer day and a lot more work. Yay. Now we're going to repeat all that on the other side, removing everything, and this time when you remove the shaft, it should look something like this, and not that other side. All right, now we're going to open the pumpkin, so be prepared to catch all the stink that comes out. Why do they call this the pumpkin? I assume because of the stink that comes out. It smells like a nasty, rotten pumpkin. So just give it one good mack with a mallet. And there goes $30 down the drain. Dang. I like these lube lockers because you can reuse them. Check that out. That sucker is still good. And I prefer that a lot better than the RTV or those paper gaskets. And I can just pop that sucker right back in and reuse it. No gunk to clean up, no RTV, no sealer, nothing. Works pretty good. I'll leave an Amazon link down below if you want to buy yourself one. Now is the perfect time to throw some brake cleaner in there, clean everything off, make it all nice and clean before you pull it out. Now before you take the caps off, check the stamps. K, 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 K. It's not going to be a K maybe in your case, but it'll be a letter. And that letter shows you the orientation of these caps. So this K is kind of like this, and this one is sideways like this. So when you take these off, you want to put them back in the same orientation. Even though they're lettered, I like to pull them out and set them down like this. Now I just got to thinking, if you're not familiar with axles, you might think that this is alien, but in reality it's just a Dana 44 out of a Cherokee with some stuff welded to it. Other than that stuff welded to it and having a spool, it's just a stock Dana 44. So it's pretty similar to most other axles like Chrysler 8 1/4 or a Dana 35. Now if you have a C-clip axle, there's going to be 2 C-clips on the end of those axle shafts that are sticking through. You'll need to pull those C-clips before you can remove the axle shaft. So in that case, you'd have to pull the diff cover first, remove those clips, and then pull the axle shafts out. Another thing is I probably don't need to remove the carrier. I could take a long rod like this and probably beat it through and beat that axle shaft that's broken out the other side. Now I can only do that though because it is a spool. If you had a locker or a regular carrier, there's going to be a cross pin in there and you can't pound anything all the way through. So I'm going to take this out just to show you guys, and maybe there's some more learning to be done inside there. You're going to get learned. Now this part can get really tricky because that sucker is in there very tight. The best way I found to do it is with a pry bar, and you want to keep something down below to keep it from just smashing on the ground if it does fall out. And you want to try to keep these races on their sides, and if there's any shims, keep those in order as well. So, let's see, this thing will budge. I think I need a real pry bar. My pry bar has gone missing somewhere, so I have a crowbar. Now, they make this thing, if you're in dire straits and you can't get this thing out, they make a case spreader, and basically it attaches here, has some big bolts on either side, and it spreads the case. But usually if you work hard enough at it, you can get this thing out. So you can pry here, you can pry on the teeth, try not to break it. I might have to put a block of wood there and pry this direction. What do you guys think? Do you think the pickle fork is the trick? Maybe that is just what the doctor ordered. Whole bunch of mud's coming off. Oh yeah, that's it. That is the spot right there. Oh yeah. Ooh. Easy peasy. Now's the perfect time to check your pinion gear for any missing teeth or bad wear spots, and you also want to clean up all of these broken pieces of metal that might be in the axle tube or just in the bottom here. There's usually a little kind of tray right here, and all of the broken bits of metal will end up right there. So clean all this out real good and inspect for damage. And if you did like me and hammered on your pumpkin here, you might want to fix that, because this is the mating surface for your seal and you don't want any rough mating. Nice and smooth mating. That's the way to do it. Oh, that is gnarly. Check that out. So that is the broken off shaft stuck down in the carrier. So what we're going to have to do is pound something through this side and pound that out. Now you can see that it did a little damage, and we'll have to fix that. And there is a little damage right here on the bearings. Now the bearings themselves aren't damaged, it's just this cage. But if you were going to use this Jeep on the road, I would definitely recommend replacing these bearings because of that. But being a off-road rig that only sees a few miles an hour, I think that'll be okay for now. And I'll have to replace things again once I break another shaft, you know, a year down the road anyway. First thing I want to do is clean up the edges right here, because there's no way that piece is coming out with those edges beat up like that. And for that, I'm going to use a carbide burr. These things eat metal for breakfast. You put them on your angle die grinder and they will just chip away at whatever you pointed at. Really cool to have in your tool kit. Carbide burr. And you can get them in different shapes too. This is just happens to be like a 1/4 inch one. I'll leave a link down below in the description where I found this on Amazon if you want to grab one. All right, let's do it. Okay, I don't know if you can see that, but that is smooth. I got another spot here. I feel like a dentist. Now, seeing as how I got metal dust all over my bearings, I'm going to clean that off, of course, before I put this back in, so don't forget that. Now, let's see if I can get this thing out without dropping the whole thing on my toe. Oh yeah, it's coming out in pieces. I think it's out. Oh yeah. Hello. And there it is. Look at that. Now how that thing breaks when it's encased in metal all the way around it, I have no idea. But I was beating on my shaft pretty good, so I can see how that would happen. Man. All right, I've cleaned it up. Make sure to check that a good spline will fit in there. So I've checked the splines on here. There's one broken off just a little ways down, but not a big deal for me. I'm gonna put the races back on and we're gonna shove it back in. Hopefully. It's gotta be perfect. Get in there. Now the cap's back on in their correct places. Now if you don't want this falling out, go ahead and torque them down. Carrier caps on a Dana 44 are 60 foot-pounds. Right. There is my spare axle shaft. I always keep these with me because I know that is my weak link. And I coat them in a little oil and wrap them in saran wrap just to keep them from rusting. Now this is the way I keep them. I keep them all packaged, ready to bolt in. But when you get them, they're not going to have all the accessories on there. It'll be just the shaft. You might even have to put the studs in there. So this is for a different video on how to assemble a shaft. I have that out there. If you remind me, I'll leave a link down below in the description if you want to see that. But basically, you use a press. If you don't have a press, then you can actually put this in the freezer and this in the oven. And this collar basically is a tight, really tight fit. And so it presses down on there with a really tight fit. But if you heat this and cool this, you can actually just slide it right on. You know, so you have a seal, basically have this retaining plate that holds it in. Then you have the seal, the bearing, and then this little ring right here which holds everything down. Does that remind you of anything? Beautiful. Now on the new side, you'll need to remove the race because the new shaft comes with its own race. And to do that, I have this janky little slide hammer that I made. This end just fits in here. If you don't have a slide hammer like this, you can just use anything that's kind of curved and you can grab onto it, you know. That's how you get that out. Now, we're just going to take the new shaft, slide it on in there. When it gets to the end, pick it up. There you go. Needs a little persuasion. All right, guys, we're going to bolt that down, put the brakes back on, put the wheel back on, do the other side, fill this with oil, and man, we are done. Well, that is how you fix a broken axle. Would you want to do that on the trail? Definitely not. Could you? Definitely. I usually keep all the tools that I need to do that right in here in the toolbox, except for the axle shaft. I don't usually carry that. That's in my truck. So usually if I break an axle shaft, I will limp it back to the to the truck. You got to remember that even with a broken axle, if you're locked front and rear, you still have three-wheel drive. So as long as you don't have any crazy obstacles, you'd be able to limp it pretty far. Now that is if things aren't binding up in there, which this brake was pretty clean for the most part. Make sure if you have any comments or questions, if there's something you don't understand, leave a question down in the comments below and I'll try my best to answer it. Make sure to hit the thumbs up, subscribe, check out our Patreon. We offer these videos early access. We're doing some giveaways. We've got a whole Jeep that we're giving away. So check out all the details at BleepinJeep.com/giveaway. There's so much more I could say, but otherwise we'll see you in the next video. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, all that awesome stuff, and Facebook, Club BleepinJeep Facebook page. Oh my gosh, there's so many things.